Here we go. Welcome to Welcome to Open Theism. Welcome to God is Open. I'm your host, Christopher Fisher. We got Tom Berger and Warren. Check out the comments on this video. There should be a link for you to join it. And so all these people come crawling back after watching Warren's stream. I see what you're doing there.
Is he doing an after show too, or
no? He's going to join this one, but he did a live stream. But I was watching the end of that, and he's talking about here. Let me pull up in this debate. Well, first of all, what did you think of the debate?
I thought it was fantastic. I didn't really have any prior familiarity with Tim Barber, and I thought he killed it. He pretty much checked all the boxes of what I thought were the strong evidence biblically. I thought he handled himself well in the back and forth for the most part. And I love that he got the last word in when James was emoting about, well, if it didn't work out with Paul, God would have had to use someone else. And he said, that's what Moses and Aaron, that's exactly what happened. He got
and then he just punched back, and James White was like losing it because
it was great.
He realized he lost the rhetorical upper hand in that little interaction. And so Tim did get a little flustered at some points or frustrated. And sometimes you see his emotion. He's probably got a high heart rate when he's doing a lot of this interaction. I don't know if he's that used to this sort of public spectacle of a debate.
It's definitely a high stress situation. So I had to cut him slack for getting a little disoriented sometimes, or not getting the exact retort right when they're talking about, well, how do you know that means this in the text? Being on the spot like that is pretty tough. But overall, like the part where he gave a summary of what the Isaiah chapter 40 and on are about, really diffused James' entire argument. Like that was the bulk of his opening statement. Tim knew it would be the bulk of his opening statement because that's, James is just repeating old arguments.
I would have liked to hear him say very specifically, the context tells us when the beginning is, when God declares the beginning to you, he's declaring it to people. Well, he does describe it in his opening or in his rebuttal, but it's not. He doesn't specifically just point that out and emphasize it when they start talking about that in later points. He says say the beginning is a point of time that's described and defined in the text, and it's not pre-creation divine decree, something like that.
He did a good job though of highlighting like the entire point of the passage being advocacy and trying to convince people to worship him instead of their idols, which doesn't make any sense if God's controlling people's desires and actions in every detail.
So GMW says he's been watching your channel and loving your videos.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So let me pull this up.
Hey, Chris, do you have the ability to enable simulcasting? I told people I was going to stream it to my channel, but I don't think you have a pay. I think
I'm not
in the free version.
Fancy as you. Let me see where would be
in settings. If not, I'll just do a community post and send all my traffic to you. I think that was your master plan anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm not as fancy as you. I'm just a poor man living on scraps. So no, I don't see that option for simulcast.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I probably should have put something on my page too, but then my tens of followers might see it.
There's dozens of us. There's dozens of us. But oh man, did you see that comment, Warren McGrew, that guy put up during the stream? Some guy in the sides like Tim, Christopher Fisher, and Idol Killer only make emotional arguments
and philosophical arguments. They don't cite the Bible. They just talk about philosophy all the time.
I have spent a lot of time refining my image. That shouldn't be it. Whatever
it's funny because you'll be like, well, what does the text say? And they're like, you don't ever go to the text. It's like, no, I'm taking you to the text. Can we talk about what the text says? It's like, you never quote scripture. It's like, I think no matter what I say, you're just not going to like it.
So, Tom, they don't like your clicking fan. He says, Prudence says, turn that off and sweat because you're annoying me. As I just read the comment. But I have the opening statement pulled up. So he takes this interesting strategy in which he commends James White, and he closes kind of in the same tone where it's like, oh, we're brothers and things like that. The thing is that James White doesn't consider him a brother. And so it feels like he was doing a testing of the water to see if he would get some sort of reciprocal treatment. And then it doesn't happen. And then he puts the gloves on a little bit during the debate, and then he kind of pulls off the gloves a little at the end of the debate. So I don't know how the audience is going to exactly perceive those transitions. If he's during the debate doing the punching, and then after the debate saying, "Oh, we're still brothers," I don't know if that's the best rhetorical strategy.
I think that's common in sports. You shake hands afterwards, and hey, it was a competition, and it's not personal. Like in when Hulk Hogan went nuts on Rocky in Rocky 3, and then afterwards he just turns it off, and they're smiling for the cameras and taking pictures. He's just like showbiz, like there's some of that I think applies in this situation too. Like in the heat of the debate, doesn't necessarily transfer to, I hate this guy all the time and he's my enemy. So I think
he took the high road. I mean, he was graceful or gracious, I should say, but he was also like knocking teeth out with every swing.
Right.
So, he's like, thank you for this debate. And then there goes a tooth, and it's, so I like that approach. I like that approach where he's like, thank you for letting me beat up on you for this last 2 hours. It's been very kind. And yeah, I thought that was pretty good. You're muted, Chris, which is great. So don't ever change.
Don't ever change.
Be immutable, Chris. Be immutable.
I am unmutable. And he did get a lot of good shots in. And so that was good. I don't, the cross-examination, I think it started off kind of off center. It wasn't really going anywhere when Tim was controlling, but he does get it finally dialed in, and he seems to have used his cross-examination to get James White to just admit basic things about Calvinism. And so it was like a whole torrent of gotchas or rhetorical statements or some sort of admissions, and James White really didn't want to participate in it, so he did everything he could to try to avoid the questions, doing the hand waving like, we'll just pretend yes to all your series of questions, and then he's like, no, I need you to say yes to each one of them.
Yeah, he was applying James White's theology to real life and his life specifically. I thought that was
okay. So that's James White got real mad. They didn't read my question. My question, of course, was I just Googled fate, and then I put definition, and we read it during the stream, but they didn't read it off during the debate. I'll have to pull that up real quick again in my sent. Question to both the debaters. Fate is defined as 1, the development of events beyond a person's control, regarded as determined by a supernatural power. And this is the Oxford Languages Dictionary. Is James White's view fate by the dictionary definition? And so they didn't read that one, but James White got really mad over things like definitions, like is God lying to someone when he gives these people regenerate Christians false theological beliefs before they get the correct ones? And James White's like, that's not a lie. It's what is it? What? He's like, that's character growth development. You basically you're saying God's lying to these people to give them character growth, therefore it's not a lie. That's not how lies
work. And that's how they interpret the scriptures too. When God says to Moses, get back, Moses, I'm going to wipe these people out. According to them, he's lying to Moses. He knows full well he's not going to do that. When he says to Abimelech, you're a dead man, he actually means I'm not going to kill you. or
Yeah, he's just lying to these people.
That's what my pastor told me. He was, complaining about my Sunday school class and ultimately ended up kicking me out. But he said, in your video, you say that God was going to kill Abimelech, but then Abimelech explained himself and then God changed his mind. And I said, well, yeah, that's what the text says. He's like, well, he wasn't going to kill him. I said, well, he said you're a dead man. And he's like, well, he didn't mean he was actually going to kill him. I said, well, how do you know that? He says, because he didn't kill him.
Yeah, so Will Duffy asked my classic question that I asked Matt Slick maybe 3 different times in 3 different debates as audience and face-to-face. In Jeremiah 18, where God says he will not do what he thought he was going to do, what does thought to do mean? And Tim instantly, he smiles. And so you can see it on camera. He's like, this is going to be good, because he knew that James White is just not going to answer the question. And so James White goes on this whole spiel about whatever. And then then Tim comes in. He's like, notice how he didn't actually address the question. I just read it, and then I accept what the text says. He did a big little spiel about it, and didn't mean anything. And so I finally, in years of asking that question, there's some sort of payoff.
It was an enjoyable debate to watch.
Ran with it.
There's a what now?
Oh, sorry. I was saying a payoff in that, like, when you ask the question, you're teeing it up for the person who's the open theist.
I keyed it up in the Jesse Morrell Slick debate, and I set Jesse Morrell up to just demolish him. And so Matt Slick gives his non-answer, and then Jesse Morrell's like, "Oh, I'll pass answering that." Like, don't pass. What? No. And he didn't point out that Matt Slick was completely avoiding what the phrase meant and what the question was actually asking. So I tried to set him up there. I got the question off in the Matt Slick Will Duffy debate, and that's where Matt, I guess it paid dividends there, because that's where he's like, oh, I'm not familiar with the context. Like, Matt Slick was just lying. He said, oh, I don't know what Jeremiah 18 is about. I don't know the context. And he had just preached on that like the week before in preparation for his open theism debate. He's preaching on Jeremiah 18. So he's just lying through his teeth because he didn't want to answer the question. And so I guess it is paying dividends in some respect. This guy, Richard, he says, do you guys think it was painful for all the Calvinists there? I do feel like this is going to be very painful because, well, if you're an ideologue, you might not recognize the signs of a lost debate. And so, Warren, I don't know if you noticed this, but if they luckily framed the debate with one camera that gave us full body image of the debaters as they're debating. And so if we take a time lapse of James White behind the podium, you're going to see crazy movements like this the whole time, like animated, like maybe like one of those Hitler speeches where there's like arm pounding.
He was flailing. He was a wacky, wavy, inflatable arm tube man. Like he was just all over the place. He
doesn't look good either. And so because like he used to be like a big bike rider, and he was at least like he doesn't look good, and now he's flailing about full body image on camera, and so a time lapse of that would be very interesting. So,
well, then you even see after the rebuttal portion when they had the intermission, he's sitting here just like dialed in and like trying to figure out what his response is going to be. Like you could see him; he was very somber. Like his whole expectations had completely changed. And he's just sitting here and he looks like dead. And meanwhile, like Tim is up, he's off. I had it off my screen, but I also had the side screen, and you could see him going over and like smiling and shaking hands and stuff. And James is just sitting here at his desk, like, okay, like we're doing this.
He wanted the John Sanders debate. So
I was gonna say at the very end, James is like, and I'm the debater that didn't prepare, so I win. Like, it was
that didn't work out for you, Fred. That was the dumbest thing.
I'm bleeding, making me the victor.
Yeah,
I bleed first. I win.
Oh man, he rolled in the debate unprepared, and I think that was part of like his thing. Like, I'm doing this unprepared, and so I didn't even have to prepare. Like,
do you think that's a cope?
Oh yeah.
You what?
Is it a cope? Like, was he prepared?
He's
Or he thought he was
trying to give
prepared?
some sort of excuse for his performance, such
Yeah.
as like, so if I say I got a 32 on my ACT and I did no prep work, no study or anything like that, I'm indicating to you like preparation and study could have gotten me a higher score, but my norm is going to be like a 32 on the ACT or something like that. And so he's trying to signal to his audience that what he thought was a good debate performance, and he probably actually thinks he did a good job. He's trying to say to them, and I could be even better. Matt Slick tries to do this too at some point where during my debate with him, where he's trying to say, "Oh, I got all these articles" or something like it. It's audience signaling.
I think it's worse than that. I think he's saying I did horrible here because I was ill prepared, but check out my debate with John Sanders where I think I fared better.
Yeah.
I think he was just like, guys, don't look at this debate. Like, whatever you do, can we take this down? Can we take the stream down now? You guys, let's just put up the John Sanders debate where John was kind and didn't swing back, as like Tim is doing. And let's just look at that and see, can we roll the tape? Can we go watch that now? I think
he's trying to relive this heyday moment in his life where he's like, "Oh, I debated an open theist and I won." He's debating open theists and he's getting trounced. It's because people have learned who James White is, how he debates, what his mentality is. They've learned about open theism and how to actually present open theistic arguments. They've learned about Calvinistic proof text. So it's easy to dismantle Calvinism. And he was operating, his John Sanders debate was operating like in the early 2000s or 1990s or something like that.
And John is acting like a professor, and he's very cordial and kind, and he thinks James is an honest interlocutor, and James is anything but. And so, of course, it looked one-sided because here you have a man who's debating for the purpose of dialogue, and you have another man who's debating for the purpose of gaining points with his base. So it was a completely different approach. Whereas here, Tim comes in and he's like, "Bend over, I brought the paddle."
Yeah, I'll school you just a little bit, Matt Slick. I'm not going to make it too bad, but you are getting a paddling, so bend over. So before this whole debate happened, that's what he was like tweeting about. That James White was saying, "Hey, I want to debate someone like John Sanders." Well, yeah, I bet you do, but you're not going to get that because people know who you are. And John Sanders had a second interaction with him, and he's like, "I want this more of a discussion. I experienced what happened last time." And so he was a little bit more guarded in his second experience. But so James White does not get to relive his glory years. I think he's like a dying racehorse or something like that. And this is his last trot around his.
Is this Tim's first debate like this?
I feel like it is.
So that must be pretty humbling too. Like he probably underestimated Tim, thinking, "Oh, he's this new guy, this nobody." He probably thought he would be able to bat him around. Yeah. And Tim came out with the arsenal.
Yeah. So he spoke clearly. He spoke rationally, logically, and he spoke very fast.
Yeah.
And so you could see that he knew his stuff. That there was him getting called out on his response, talking about anthropomorphisms. And so that's one thing you have to worry about when you have pre-written finales or pre-written responses. And I had to do this. I was expecting my John Singleton debate to probably go south. And so I had to revise my closing on the fly and say, because I was preparing for some sort of hostile interaction that just never came. And so then I had to say, well, this doesn't apply to John Singleton, but in my typical dealings with Calvinists, this is true, because it just didn't apply in that situation. Yeah. So you have to be careful about those types of pre-written responses, and you have to think about those types of possibilities.
The pre-written response was what where Tim went in and he heard consistent arguments from James, and he's like, if I was going to answer it, this is how I want it to be answered. So I have a question where he's going to ask me this, and I'm going to respond, and then I have a question where he may ask me this, and I'm going to. So he was just prepared, and so James is like, "You're reading," and he's like, "Well, you asked the same 7 questions, so I went ahead and I pre-answered those just so I'd have them ready and concise. It doesn't mean that I'm not responding to you, but I'm responding to a question you asked here and what you've asked elsewhere. So
Desi says, man, she chose me over you, Warren, for watching.
You're dead to me, Desi. You are dead to me. You're dead to me.
He just thinks faster than White. Yeah, you do actually. As people age, their IQ goes down, and he's kind of towards his twilight years, James White, and you do get the sense that Tim was a sharp young individual, knew what he's talking about, and able to answer in unexpected ways. James White just didn't know what to do with him. He's not. Maybe he's sharper when he's younger. Maybe not, but we might be giving him too much credit. Desi says she still loves you, Warren.
You're dead to me. You're dead to me, Desi. There's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from that. You chose Chris.
It's that scene in AI where they get Teddy.
Haven't you heard what James White and Matt Slick have said about this man? You chose him over me. I'm hurt. I'm hurt. My heart
is the worst. I am so bad. Well, Warren McGrew, in the comments, they were calling you "he who shall not be named." So I think
that.
I think this church, this church has a visceral reaction against you, because for those who are unaware, you were originally contacted to be part of this debate before James White figured out that they're contacting you, and then preemptively tried to get you canceled, and then they had to lie about the reason.
It was a different church, though. It wasn't New City. So it was originally going to be Breathe Reformed, and this was at New City. So they changed venue for this debate with Tim.
But it's the same church, though, that's hosting. That's my understanding.
No. New City is a completely different church.
Right, but they're the ones who arranged this, or are they out completely?
No, I think Breathe Reformed had nothing to do with this debate. It was the church was New City, Denver, that was hosting, moderating. That was the New City pastor. They just had to change location from their small church location to like an amphitheater or something to host the turnout. So it was all run and conducted tonight, I believe, by New City. But originally, a church who was trying to arrange a debate reached out to me to debate James White, and he said, "I will not shake that man's hand or even talk to him." So, and you could tell, like, he was giving me several really kind shout outs, veiled during some of his statements. Like, people were like, "You live rent free in his head," and I was like, "I sleep under his bed." Like, I terrify that man. So I take it as the highest compliment.
Oh, that they said you're the most famous open theist. I'm like, okay,
on YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube. I mean, not according to some ladies like Desi, but I mean, what does she know?
She didn't say that you're more famous than me or anything.
I'm kidding.
Well, the reason I wear tight t-shirts for the ladies.
Yeah, the reason I don't, for the ladies.
Like, I gotta cover up my.
What do you think? I'm wearing layers, man. Come on, I'm in the middle of August over here, and I'm
creating shoulders for yourself by adding some more padding on those. But it's very interesting. So I do have pulled up his opening statement, and so
can I set the record straight here. I talked to Tim the moment he agreed to debate James, and I agreed to do a live stream watch party. You preemptively announced yours, but I think I beat you with intent. And now everybody over on the God's Open Facebook page thinks that I came in and tried to ride your coattails.
You might have, but you never invited me. How does that make me feel? You never said, "Hey, why don't you do it on my channel?"
You have a standing invite.
Oh, I have a standing invite?
Anytime you want to come to Idol Killer, you have a standing invite. You know that. You got the keys to the house. Like, what are you talking about?
I got the keys to the house.
This is was it Kramer and Newman having the New Year's Eve party in 1999?
What? This sounds like a really
argument
old
about
story.
Parties. It just sounds like an old reference. You guys are
I don't know Kramer. It sounds like a court case.
No, Kramer and Newman.
Oh, like a Seinfeld reference?
Yeah, like one had been planning for decades to have a 1999 New Year's Eve party, and the other one
remember that. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I turned on Seinfeld for today. I was like, I never watched any of this Seinfeld. So just today, I put on some episodes while I was multitasking. I'm like, this is not very funny. And then they do like little bits of Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up. I'm like, that's not funny either. It's like, did people think this was funny? It's just kind of this offbeat, maybe observational type of humor that might get like a chuck. It's like watching Friends.
So you're
Friends was a
wondering,
knockoff.
you're wondering about his audience, and you're asking yourself, who are these people?
You're fired. You're fired.
What's the deal with Calvinists?
What's the deal with these people?
Don't. I think he wasted a little bit of time here, and this is one of the things I brought up to him, where he's talking about 4 views of the future. If he would have just consolidated it to 2 views, either you're a closed theist or you're an open theist, probably would have saved him some time. But they were given a lot of time to do stuff for the opening. It was like 20 minutes or something like that, which is like unheard of for an opening. So you got a lot of time to do a lot of things. And were you ever invited to look at this opening, Warren? That I'm scrolling through casually?
No, I got it early. I've read it often. I planned on doing a debate live review. And
so one thing he did was he framed the debate, which you always want to frame the debate, talk about win conditions or non-win conditions. But he kind of strayed away from that a little bit in the debate, where he's going off the subject of, is everything predestined or not? I think it's mentally hard to stay on track during a lot of these interactions. So I'm not faulting him that much, but pulling it back during his closing was a good idea, and reframing back to how you originally framed. We believe what he's stating is that the future is not necessarily 100% open, but if there's at least one open event, then the future is not closed. And so I think he did a good job in framing. The words might have been able to be consolidated a little bit for conceptual sake, so that his audience doesn't get lost. But I think that was a really good attempt, and I think he succeeded in his goal in the frame.
I like what Mac and Cheese Life is saying about the 2-minute comment. That was pretty funny. He's like, you'll notice he took 2 minutes and didn't answer the question. And he's like, excuse me, sir, I took 1. He goes, oh, I'll apologize. I apologize when I'm wrong. You took 1 minute, but still didn't answer the question.
Yeah. So he did. Someone in our live stream said he's bragging about apologizing, saying, I apologize, as people should. What that was it was a sideways jab at James White, because James White will never give ground.
Yeah.
He'll never apologize. He'll never say someone has a good point. He'll never do that, especially in a debate setting. He's just unwilling to give a single inch. And this is my constant experience with people of this caliber. It's like, what are you going to lose in this debate and just giving an inch? So if you go watch any like political debates there's a YouTuber called Destiny, that's his entire thing. Never give an inch, challenge everything, and just talk and say everyone's wrong and not provide any solutions or interaction. It's
a roadblock to discussions. Like I've had interactions with people like that too, where like you're trying to make a point or get to a point, and they'll argue about every detail of like the premise along the way. So you can never get to like the point that you're making, because they want to argue about every word along the way. It's actually, as far as him admitting he made a mistake, yeah, that is what you're supposed to do. As a commenter said, why is he bragging about something you're supposed to do? Like, but a lot of people will not do it. And actually earlier today on Facebook, somebody was asking about, are there Calvinists? How many Calvinists are flat earthers? And I posted a quote from John Calvin indicating that he is a flat earther. He was criticizing. John Calvin was talking about how everybody has something that they have like a blind spot, like they're in gross error about. Even really smart people, even people like Plato, who's like the smartest, he clung to his round globe, So you're saying that's the error. And I posted that, and someone was saying like, you need to read that sentence again. And thinking that I had misunderstood. And after a couple back and forth, the person said like, LOL, I don't say this very often, but I was mistaken. It was like, wow, some
Wow.
stranger on social media admitted that they were mistaken. Like usually you just either get ghosted or maybe they'll delete the initial comment and, but somebody actually said, oh yeah, I was mistaken. Whoops. And it's refreshing because you're supposed to do it, but people don't.
Yeah, so the link for joining for people who want to engage is actually in the comments of this video. And so if you just pull up the video description, and so Floral was saying someone wants to join and talk about this, but I think there's a lot of instances
Is
where
it James White?
that would be fantastic, but at zero probability of that. There's a lot of instances where we could go back and clip things out, and little back and forth, little moments of adrenaline or endorphin releases that we could pull from this debate. And so James White, I don't think he's going to have a very good sleep tonight. I don't think he's going to sleep well thinking that this was a good presentation that he's done. And once he sees the video and how the video is framed, he's really not going to think that, because his body language did not look good during that debate. And you could see him fully during Tim's time when Tim's talking, and you could see him over there like shaking his head and things like that. Did you watch him while Tim was talking? Did you know?
Oh yeah, he's doing this, he's doing like this, and just
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how James tries to reframe this to save face with his audience over on the dividing line. I mean, I expect his addressing this will be like, oh, it's what we always hear from these same guys. But then he's going to try and say that it's new and, dynamic. And so he's going to try and have his cake and eat it too. I think you're going to see some serious inconsistency with him handling it and sweeping it under the rug.
Two things. Tim's body language was great. When James White's up there and making points, he's like laughing or smiling. Like, that's a stupid point. That'll be easy to destroy. And so you see these two different frames. But what were you just saying real quick?
On the dividing line, when he tries to do his response to it, he's inconsistent.
Oh man, well, I'll think about what I was going to say, but
I thought just the kind of overall, how did they do? Because a big part of these debates, right? You both write your opening case, and the other person is hearing it cold, and they then ought to respond to that in the next section, right?
What? We need to have a conversation. Okay, you think that Calvinism is a joke, but I want to tell you, it is not. And I know, because I am a puppet. I did not watch the debate, but I know that James White, he did the thing that he was supposed to do. Okay? So do you repent?
Of course.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. And I noticed that as I get closer, my skin tone becomes like yours.
I have to have bright lights shining me all the time, just flashing brilliance.
I thought you emitted light.
Right. Well, my screen is so big because it's like my TV screen. I watch shows with the kids. It's just like a constant flood of. I'm basking in this stuff.
I think what it is you're probably compensating for the lack of brightness inside your head.
I probably compensate. I like to compensate for a lot of stuff.
Yes, this reminds me of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. I just want to see John Calvin just rail on Chris Fisher for an hour.
It could be pretty easy. We could find out. Christopher, are you a puppet?
Yes. I think we're all little meat puppets, and so.
But can you prove it by coughing?
Cough on command.
Yes, exactly. That's how I know I am a puppet.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to confirm that James White definitely won that debate because he is Team Calvin.
Team Calvin.
And I also have his picture behind my head.
Oh, I see that James White picture. Move your head just a little bit. Let's see that one more time. Oh, yeah.
John Calvin's an actual scholar who understands Greek and Hebrew, and he goes through these verses and he explains what they mean. And it's not always a pro-Calvinist interpretation. And so there's a lot of intellectual honesty with Calvin, even though I don't think he's the best human being ever.
Neither are you, though.
Yeah. I've never claimed to be nice. I never claimed to be good.
That's true. That's true. I've seen you say that you are a jerk.
I'm not a good guy.
Yes. Neither is Warren. He's got a very round head.
I'm a sweetheart with a big head. Okay, leave me alone.
Well, you look like a, evangelical worship leader with your haircut. You probably wear skinny jeans all night.
Yeah, do you got the inside arm tattoo where you can do for the love of?
I eat my feelings, so all my jeans are tight now. I gotta watch what I'm eating.
You do. We can see it's catching.
I'm starting to look like James White behind the pulpit. I gotta change up some stuff.
I feel like that's a thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. I can't rag on James. Like I'm serious. Like
one thing that you might have noticed from the debate was when Tim came up, he said, "I have to keep raising up this mic." It was a subtle comment about how he's taller or something than James White, and it was so subtle that people subconsciously probably ingested this fact. And of course, taller people are seen as more successful, more intelligent, and just overall, they just, "Hey, Tom, you're like 6'5" or 6'6" or something."
6'9".
Really?
I'm smarter than all of you and more successful.
Yeah, I mean Tom,
Yeah.
and people aren't taller than me, and Tom is taller than me.
I think I legitimately stand about.
There's a doorway behind me. Watch this.
This man is a giant.
No, you're Gandalf in Frodo's house.
Yeah, so he's got like giant daughters too, and so it's like, hey boys, if you want super giant children.
So are you like
I'm not
just
super
a
giant. My
descendant of?
sisters are over 6 foot. But
Are you a Nephilim?
What's that?
Are you a Nephilim?
No.
Are you one of those mighty men of old, men of renown?
I know someone who talks about Nephilim a lot, and he's like 6'5" or 6, and I was kind of like,
I was Joe and Ken Scott were pro-life activists, and like I was at a Bob and he was like having like a barbecue. We were in Colorado at some sort of cabin that they own.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and he's like, "Chris, I got to talk to you about something very important." This is Ken Scott. He's like, "You ever heard of the Nephilim?" He's like, "These guys were 80 feet tall," and they're like, "What is this conversation that I'm having?" And it's all like quotes from like Enoch and stuff like that, trying to tell me about
grasshoppers.
these. Like, I okay. I just kind of shook my head. Yeah, I guess.
Well, I'm going to say, Christopher, it was determined by the Lord that I would disrupt your stream. And so, thank you so much for letting me roast you.
And thank you for the Institutes of the Christian Religion.
You are welcome for preserving such a beautiful gem that gives the Lord so much glory.
Yeah, Enoch says they're ginormous. They're not just like 100 feet tall. They're ginormous.
Right.
And I could never trust a man named Enoch. He stole my shoes once. Anyway. Goodbye.
Well, thank you for joining us, John Calvin.
Take care.
Well, it's actually Jean-Yves. So, Jean Calvin is my hero after James White.
Oh.
So, love you all. Au revoir.
Take care.
Oh, man.
That was wild.
I don't know what that was. That was not planned or anything, but
that's Geneva. That's Geneva.
Oh, Geneva. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm tracking.
I didn't catch that either. I thought like John was his name, like J-E.
Like John Calvin, you know.
Yeah. I thought the Eva was for like evangelical, like Big Eva. So I'm glad you cleared that up, Warren.
Absolutely. Anything I can do to help.
Oh man. But it's interesting. James White was like, he didn't even respond to my points, and like Tim had just given his opening. It's like you're not usually don't use your
Yeah.
opening to respond to people's points. What is this weird this weird criticism? Are you mentally
that's the next
tracking?
round.
Like if Tim did that to James, James would rip him apart, saying, "You don't know proper debate forum. You don't know debate etiquette."
Yeah,
here's the
Tim
man of the
doesn't
hour
know
himself.
debate form. Tim doesn't know etiquette. Oh, there he is.
But like if Tim did it, James would be roasting him.
Well, James does
James
that.
comes in and does it.
There is a debate where someone criticizes James for not responding to his opening, and James White's like, when we do openings, we just do openings. We don't use our openings to respond to people. You guys remember that debate? But then he does it to Tim. Tim, welcome to the podcast. They let you go?
They did, yeah. I got a litany
you.
of questions afterwards, but there were two people in the audience, aside from my family and friends who came, who agreed with me and said you did a phenomenal job. And one of those was Will Duffy. So that's good enough for me.
Now listen. You look like you're in a room that perhaps you're not free. I want you to blink 3 times if we need to send help to you. You look like you're being held hostage right now.
Yeah, no, thank God we've got some friends in the area. My house is about an hour and a half away from the location of the debate. So rather than returning there, we stopped off at the house of some friends, and we're going to crash here for the night. But I assure you, I am unsequestered.
There's no reformed folks there holding you against your will.
Can you show me can you show me on this doll where the reformed person?
Yeah, I was thinking we're going to get like a Hezbollah video.
We were talking to a doll just a minute ago.
Yeah.
We had Geneva from what was it? Church Under a Rock was on here.
Oh yeah, neat.
So Tim, how do you think you performed?
On the whole, I think I did pretty dang well. There's a lot that I wanted to get to that just in the heat of the moment, looking down at my timer, I was like, you know what? Didn't get to cover everything that I wanted to cover, but I think I did a sufficiently good job at highlighting the absurdity of the worldview, which was really my goal, and emphasizing that he's making an absolute claim that he can't prove, and that all I need is one instance of anything being open, any open possibility, and my view is correct. So I feel on the whole I did pretty dang well. There's a lot I would take back, but specifically there's like some room I know for growth in the cross exam. There was some cross exam help, but
I think you did well.
Cool.
With especially when he would reframe, you would stop and you'd say, "I see what you're doing. I'm rejecting that, and I'm going to move forward based off of my own position." So I thought you intercepted that and redirected it very, very well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was I know that's his MO. I know, frankly, that if you're going to try to live from that worldview, you have to deflect from the truth, and you have to reframe things in a way that's more palatable, just to live and not, lay in your bed, bedridden with grief from an insane worldview. But
what kind of view did you have of James across the stage train? Could you see what he was doing over there?
Oh yeah, I don't know how good the video quality was. I was obviously not watching, but I did kind of I inclined my body in such a way that I could watch every interaction and every response, and I was really it was good. I enjoyed thoroughly the way that stuff landed.
Oh, there were times where you'd see him like rapping his knuckles on the table, or he would sit there and he would just kind of
you could hear his knuckles.
Yeah, you could hear it. And then during the intermission, you got up and you left, and he's just sitting here dejected at the table, just like the camera didn't cut away. You just saw him there, sitting there.
I was shaking Will Duffy's hand. I was, hugging my wife and my kids who were there. A couple of friends came up and were very, very encouraging. I did just kind of chance a glance backwards, and I just kind of saw him head in hand, trying to figure out. So I felt pretty good about the effect. The opening statement and the rebuttal had their desired effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really liked your list of texts indicating, 1 Samuel 15 and Isaiah 5, and you hit a lot of the good ones, and that in his response, he just waved them all off and just said, "Oh, the straw man." He didn't address any of them. But on the other hand, obviously, you knew he was going to spend time in the Isaiah 40s because that's what he always goes to. And so you responded directly to it, and quite well, talking about what the point of that passage was, that it was advocacy that doesn't even make sense in his worldview, and that it was about God saying what he's going to do and then doing it. That doesn't mean that everything is settled. It's not just knowledge of things that are going to happen, like predictions. It's here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it, and then you're going to know it was me and not your idols. So,
right.
So it really undermined his whole argument. That was the bulk of his opening statement.
It really was, and I knew it would be. I told Warren before I did the debate that if he does not mention Isaiah 40 through 48, Cyrus, and Judas, kind of a curveball. He didn't actually mention Judas.
He didn't mention Judas.
So Warren, I'm on the hook for eating my shoes, because I said if he doesn't mention Isaiah 40 through 48 and Cyrus and Judas in at least the first 5 minutes, I'm going to eat my shoes.
Well, he mentioned 2 out of the 3. So I think you just need to force down the laces.
I'll eat 66% of my shoes. Yeah.
He would say that God decreed, or God prescribed, you shall not murder, but then ordained that Jesus would be murdered. And it's like, what about everyone else who's ever been murdered? Like, it's not just this one special, like you point to that one because everyone's like, oh yeah, God planned that. But according to him, he planned every single murder that's ever happened and ever will happen.
And I never wanted him to lose sight of that implication. That implication has to be front and center in order for the totalizing Calvinist worldview to be properly assessed. We have to drag that implication out from behind the shiny veneer of someone who wears nice suits and has a neatly cropped beard, and drag it out in the light so that people can kind of turn it around and see that what they're looking at is a polished turd. I needed to make sure that implication was
right. His opening statement was like a series of assertions. It felt like he thought he was giving some sort of sermon. And so he bloviated on specific points, and it feels like he only made like 3 real points, and then just spent the rest of the time just making unbased assertions about those points.
He made claims that could have been topics of other debates. He just here's a list of things that I'm wrong about that we could have future debates about. God created time, and things like that.
So it would be interesting to go through his opening and say, what the heck was he thinking by having this as his opening? He's not presenting evidence. He's not making any sort of factual claims. It's just all sorts of, there's a lot of emoting too.
And I want to say something very, very clearly right now that I know has kind of like caught me some flack in the open theist camps. And I take all those shots. I don't mind that at all. There's a lot about Dr. White that I really like. Like, God help me, I like the man. There's certainly the work that he's contributed to the discussion about the King James only controversy is actually quite good and based on unusually good scholarship. When he's not trying to defend a particular and strange view of Calvinism, he does a very good job against Mormons, and he does a very good job in his work against Islam. And so there is a sense, I have genuine respect for him. I know as a result of this debate that I'm probably going to be persona non grata to James White. And I knew that going in, but I had a letter in hand that was given to me by some of my friends who are Reformed Calvinists, who are missionaries in Tunisia, which is 99 point something percent Muslim. Mm-hmm. And there was a small church plant that started there as a result of his teaching against Islam. The people decided to go and actually investigate what James White was saying. In that instance, he was correct. And some people came to faith, and God did some pretty amazing stuff through it. So I gave him his letter from these people. We went to lunch about 4 hours before the debate actually began. And I was just, I expressed those things. I said, Dr. White, generally I'm a fan of yours. We're about to debate, and I'm not going to pull my punches, but I want you to know that I'm thankful for what you have contributed to the cause of Christ, even if we disagree on this pretty intense and important thing. And I want to make sure that that's expressed really clearly too, because again, I know I'm going to get people in my camp probably wanted me to just only beat him down and expose him in almost.
So I think being charitable and kind in that you're extending an olive branch to him and saying like, hey, James, it's over. You've tried. You did a good job.
Yeah.
Like, come on over. It's okay. We don't burn bridges. We burn down doctrine.
Yeah.
But you're welcome here. Come over. So
Yeah.
I think that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
you also note, we talked about this before he came on. James didn't prepare for your debate.
He did not.
He said in his closing statement, "I didn't prepare, so I won."
He was really proud of that.
Yeah.
I think he felt bad that you had prepared statements, and so he tried to tear you down for those prepared statements. And
how dare I?
He should have prepared because he didn't look good. He was floundering. He thought he could wing it, and you can only wing it when you know your opponent fairly thoroughly to know what they're going to say in relation to things. If you're unfamiliar with what your debate opponent's going to say, you can't do that. It's going to turn out like this. And I think the Calvinists are going to take this as a loss. I think verbally they're going to say that this is a win, but I don't think they're going to be sharing it in their groups to try to get other people to watch this debate.
It's okay. We'll share it for them.
Yeah.
On the one hand, Tim, have you done debates like this before?
This is my third debate.
Okay.
I haven't seen your debates yet, so
These
you were like
were publicized.
kind of a newcomer to me, whereas I've seen James White debate Bob Enyart, and I maybe seen Chris's critiques of things that he's done. That's about what I've seen of him. But in that way, so you had two advantages going into this debate. One, you're correct and he's incorrect. So that's a huge advantage. But then secondly, obviously you knew a lot about what he in particular would argue as a Calvinist, because as distinct from, say, Matt Slick or somebody else, because he previously has gone to those chapters in Isaiah. So you could just be completely ready to address that.
So here's
whereas he didn't really know from you. Although I think everybody here, like we were sort of talking beforehand about, what would we present? And you did present, it doesn't have to be you, but he should know what open theists view as their sort of particularly.
It's not a new case, really.
Yeah.
The particulars of the case, especially when it comes to the nature of absolute claims,
right,
and the much more modest claim that all I need is one open possibility, and saying my view is correct, but then it's a matter of discussing among other people who are biblical Christians, like, where is the slider on that? But it's kind of interesting too, because I'm not going to make any friends with this statement, but it wasn't just Calvinism I was shooting down. Ultimately, it was like the decree, and that was the furnishing philosophical underpinning that he was utilizing to make his claim. But the truth of the matter is that I also took down Arminianism and Molinism by the same token. Mm-hmm. And so it's these blueprint worldviews versus sort of the warfare worldview, the way Boyd kind of frames it up.
And yeah, that was a good distinction. I think that was a very good way to prime the audience for the differences. And so I think that was well done. What you should have done, though, when he's talking about the verse in which God works all things, you should have probably said that word is synergy, James White. You believe in synergism now?
Synergy. I do not think he was expecting me to read the Greek from the interlinear to him. I think that he abandoned that pretty quickly as soon as he knew that I was actually able to read Greek to him. He's like, crap, I can't use that anymore.
Well, I feel like what actually went through his mind was this guy could read the letters, but he doesn't understand the words. I think that's how he came off, and that's how his tone was about you reading the text. Like, this is not doing us any good because you just don't understand the Greek. So that feels to be his mental process there. But you pointed out that there are valid translations. God works all things with us, and there's a whole chapter in one of the books I have that talk about this. Where do I reference this? I think I reference it in my first book that I wrote. I don't know. I have to go find it.
Which I am still reading, and which was enormously helpful. Actually, I'll have you know.
Hopefully for the Isaiah part.
How's that?
Hopefully for the Isaiah part.
Holy cow! Yes, very good, very helpful.
One of the things that was interesting too, when you came in and you started pressing him on his changing from like amillennialism to postmillennial, whatever he is now. It's like God decreed you to have false beliefs. How do you know he hasn't decreed you to be wrong now? You know, and he's like, that was great.
That was the one thing I knew I needed to do in the cross exam, because I wanted him to admit that on his worldview, and he really, really fought me on it, but I think he eventually kind of like acquiesced in some way.
He said yes. He said yes.
He said yes right off the bat, which was great. But then he really wanted to walk that back, because I made him look really bad for it. But I really wanted to take him to task for, why are you appealing to any other explanation other than God's decree? If you think that the decree is why these things happen, why are you appealing to anything else? Because that is the ultimate reason why anything takes place on his worldview. Mm-hmm. And so I really didn't ever want to let him get away from that, including, again, sin. And I brought up some pretty cagey stuff. Unfortunately, I had to, but some pretty unpleasant things that, given his worldview, was God's idea before he had anybody else enact it. And it's him expressing an attribute of himself in the creation through something really vile. And I don't think that
evil as an eternal attribute of God expressing creation,
right,
is a strong point that needs to be continued to hammer these fatalists and closed theists. That they need to realize they're arguing that evil is an eternal attribute.
And it's repulsive. It's repulsive to non-Christians. You're slandering God while claiming to glorify him. And people are turned off from Christianity because they think Calvinism is Christianity. And, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did God do this? Why did God kill my loved one? And in the scriptures, when there's wickedness, it infuriates God. He's provoked to anger. He, waxes hot. He responds to sin viscerally. And yet they say, oh, that's just from our perspective. Really, it's happening exactly the way he always wanted it to happen, to glorify him. It's like, oh, this vile thing happened. Well, God must have had a reason. Oh, it's so we could all preach about it this Sunday. And like,
God did
it to warn people. But the people are going to believe or respond exactly. He's controlling that too. So how is that a purpose? It's such nonsense.
It's thanks for nothing, God. And that the book I'm talking about is Double Take by Timothy Goddard, and he points out that this word synergy is usually like multiple actors, and so God's working things together with us. And so he does. There is a case. You could probably read it the Calvinist way. You could probably read it this way. There's probably other takes as well. But
since he's making an absolute claim, everything in the Bible has to agree with that interpretation in order for that interpretation to be valid. It has to. The entire, again, 31,000 some odd verses in the Bible and all 1,189 chapters have to agree, and I don't want to say synergize, but they have to make sense with that interpretation of that passage in order for that passage to be interpreted that way. To say that it means that and then ignore the rest of the scriptures that repudiate that view is letting the tail wag the dog.
It's they've got to twist the entire narrative of scripture, and every passage is, well, that's not really what's happening. They're explaining it so that people can understand. They're talking down to them. So, God, the prophets, the apostles, none of them could tell it like it is. They had to say the opposite of what it is. But don't worry, I'm here and I can explain to you what's really going on. It's really now Abraham.
And here's the idea, like when the authors are writing, the people are as nothing in God's sight. That what are they just discounting all these prior texts that exist that they could access about Moses and Abraham's interaction with God? They don't have that in mind, or is it about something else? Or is it about God's power and God's directions of nations and God be able to make his things come true? And not about his individual dealings with individuals to get the lawyers baptized.
You guys, I genuinely cannot believe that he agreed to debate me. There was so much he stood to lose if it went poorly for him, and he had almost nothing to gain if he lapped me, let alone just eke out a victory. But he had so much to lose, and he really didn't prepare. he prepared in a sense, but I'd only put out a couple of videos on this stuff. You know, I'm kind of like the secret boss. I've been doing a lot of reading in the background, but I hadn't really been like out there publicly declaring that I'm, you know, this is what I believe, and I'm here to
Secret boss.
White's worldview or something. Yeah, I'm the one that you accidentally run into when you open up the treasure chest, thinking you're going to get something really good, but instead it's the boss that's harder than the boss of the game in some Final Fantasy game or something. You know,
I thought you were talking about the show where the
undercover boss
guys, and he comes in and he's a worker. And then
for those of you who don't know me, I'm a big gamer, so
yeah. They're like, I steal out of the register every day. And he's like, I own this company. You're all fired. I think that's what you did to this guy.
Yeah. You know, if the shoe fits, I suppose.
But yeah. So I was pretty happy with a lot of the little interactions that happened. Like when you adjusted the microphone and say, I keep after raising this microphone. Is James White short?
If you've never seen him, yeah, he's not a tall guy. I'm
Right.
6'3", so this is kind of not a fair comparison. So.
We're all tall except for Warren. He's
I'm 6'3". What are you talking about? Come on, man.
Yeah. So I'm a clean.
Just ask Drew. He comes up to here on me.
If I had to guess, he's probably in the neighborhood of like a 6'5'11". He's above average height. But
okay.
It didn't look good. It didn't look good, especially with that centrally framed camera that didn't like pan and move at all. It was just like, hey, there's James White standing there beforehand, and then I walk up and I have to move.
I'm going to do a time lapse of James White and his rebuttal. He starts flailing all over the place.
Yeah.
He's animated, he's angry, and I think he realizes that at that point he realizes kind of the debate's over and it's not going to look good for him. And so he doesn't have the composure to get himself, keep himself. I think Desi pointed out in the comments, is like, James White, get yourself together. What's going on here? He just lost it in the rebuttal. And so from there, it was downhill.
In defense of him, again, probably much to the chagrin of my other open theist friends, like the guy has 4 weeks of travel under his belt. He's not feeling great health-wise. He had a debate last weekend. He had a debate today. He's got another debate on Wednesday. It's not an excuse. If you're going to take on the workload, you should be able to prepare for that workload, I think. But you know, he could be forgiven for just thinking, hey, here's this little, you know, nobody open theist in Colorado who I'm just going to wallop on my way out to go debate Jared Longshore, who's another.
Did he get paid for this?
Did he pay for it?
Did he get paid for the debate?
Not that I know of. I don't know either way. I can't confirm.
Oh, okay. So
Chris, when you're doing your time lapse, consider maybe juxtaposing it next to one of those car dealership guys.
The wavy thing like that. We could make a new AI song about this. That would be pretty good. So Warren's wheels are turning over there.
You can already see it.
Yep. I'm over here scheming.
But I do like your rebuttal in which you systematically listed out the list of fallacies that he had been engaging in. And so like I think at that point, that's when he's just like, oof. And you see him like, because if you know lists of fallacies and are able to identify them on the fly, that's really devastating in debates because people, then they can't get away with a lot of their bad behaviors. And so he realized he's going to be called to account for some of those things.
Yeah.
I also think it was really funny when Will Duffy got his question in about what does it mean God thought to do? And James White went on this really weird rant about something rather than the question. And then you're just like, well, I just read the text and I believe the text. I think that was a perfect opportunity. And
I know that there's a backstory to that question. Where it's been asked a couple of times and the ball's gotten dropped a little bit. Like,
right.
We haven't made that particular chick come home to roost just yet. And I was like, read me the text again so that I can say, yes, I just agree with what that says.
Right. It's like, it says he doesn't do what he thought he was going to do. I just read
You're
it.
Noticing a theme here. I'm not afraid of what the Bible has to say.
That was great.
I don't have to make an explanation for it to get it to fit my view. I read what it says and I take it at face value.
Yeah, he started doing this weird thing. It's like you read a text, he's like, oh, that's God acting in time. It's like, does that solve something that
First off, where is that in the text?
Yeah.
Second off, how does that free you from the implication that, for example, if what God is doing in time is decreeing sin and bringing about horrible things that elsewhere in the scriptures he says are robbing him of glory, how does that free you of the charge? It doesn't. Oh, yeah.
Living says, I LOL'd when James White was reading the part from Isaiah, and Tim said, yeah, keep reading. And so
that was 2 Peter, I think.
It was 2 Peter 3. Yeah, he was like, he was like, and I did give him a nice big range, and he was reading the whole range to kind of filibuster and take up the time. But then he got to verse 12 where he knew the part about speeding up the day of the Lord comes, and then he's just like, he just kind of tries to
didn't get an answer.
I'm like, no, read that one too. Read that one too.
Did he really answer? I don't remember him answering that.
He didn't.
And I don't think he was prepared. I don't think he was prepared for your decisiveness with, okay, I accept that answer and I'm going to interrupt you and I'm going to reclaim my time and let's move on.
No.
Because he likes to filibuster. And when you kept reclaiming your time, it was frustrating him because he couldn't filibuster. He was able to answer, but he wasn't able to drag it out and droll on and bury his answer under all this.
Yeah, I'm like, no, that's a good enough answer. Thank you. How about this next one?
He got really frustrated.
Yeah,
I like it when you reclaimed your time and you asserted your authority. This is my time. I'm asking the questions. So you can stay on point.
I only really let him go on if I was pretty confident that the answer that he was giving was going to come across as nonsense. Mm-hmm. So if I was really confident, like, oh yeah, let him keep digging the hole. If he's wanting to keep portioning out the rope that he's going to use to hang himself here in about 5 minutes, then yeah, I'm not gonna. What's it? Sun Tzu who said, "I'm never interrupt an enemy when he's in the process of destroying himself."
Right.
Go for it.
And so there's little humiliation rituals that you could force your opponent to go through in debates, like making them read the text that they don't want to read. That it's a funny humiliation ritual. It's like, keep reading the text, because then you're like asserting the authority. You're saying that I actually affirm the text, and you're making them do a menial chore, which is to their detriment. And so James White, there's several of those times where he's in this almost type of humiliation ritual because just how he's handling the questions. And I didn't see that reversed at all against you. He didn't know, he couldn't get wherever he's trying to go with his questions to you. And it didn't seem to benefit his controlled time didn't seem to benefit him any.
It was also to my advantage not to go first. I know a lot of people were wanting me to kind of like angle for going first, but I had a pretty good sense. I knew what he was going to say. So I gain nothing by letting him go second, but I gain everything by letting him say what I already know he's going to say, and maybe even use some of the rhetorical weight of being able to say, I know what you were going to say already, and then have a response prepared, where my opening statement was not intended in any way to rebut what he was saying in his opening.
No, it shouldn't be.
When I'm just exactly, an opening statement is supposed to be me laying out my case, but just by the nature of it, in my opening statement, I undid a lot of what he had to say in his opening statement, so that he was on the back heel. He was on his heels by the time he got around to his rebuttal. And then when he had really nothing he could do with it, by the time I got to my rebuttal, I was able to just kind of drop the hammer on everything I wanted to. So I was really thankful that it was structured that way.
Yeah, I do like
he flowed. I don't think he flowed a single point through the debate. Was there a point you saw him flow, Chris?
No,
he did. He had his little notepad out and he was scribbling.
No, but I mean that he was able to successfully defend to the end.
Oh no.
No, I don't think there was a single point that he was able to defend.
So you did a very good thing where you're pointing out that all this fatalism and determinism and decreeism or whatever is distinction without difference. And Desi here says, listening to James try to make the distinction between fatalism and God's decree was funny. The question I asked, which they didn't present in the debate, they seem to be prioritizing the text ones that people were sending to a text number. I questioned to both. Fate is defined as 1, the development of events beyond a person's control, regarded as determined by a supernatural power, and this is the Oxford Language Dictionary. Is James White's view by the is James White's view fate by the dictionary definition? And so they asked a different fatalism question that wasn't as pointed or wasn't as good, but I think you took him to task on that as well. How he's just playing around with words, and it's not distinction, no difference.
Distinctions without a difference, and how it's so much bloviating simply because he wants to avoid the associations of those words, which in reality are the philosophical underpinnings, and again, kind of the backing furniture of where that realm of thought came from. He doesn't want to use fatalism and he doesn't want to use determinism because he knows they're Greek words. And decretalism is some weird way of him saying, well, no, but this is like the Jesus version of that, but also it's like the biblical, he's trying to get away from the associations of those words first and foremost. It's a distinction without a difference, just for rhetoric.
I'm not a communist, I'm a progressive. You're just coming up with a new word for the thing that everyone doesn't like.
I don't think you should be able to murder babies necessarily. I'm just pro-choice. I want women to be able to have the choice of,
and then eventually
the choice to kill their kid. I'm not for killing kids. Just the choice that's just.
You should have the choice. I think everyone should have. Shouldn't people have choices? Yeah, that's what it was.
But yeah, that's pretty funny. And what did you do to him during the cross examination where you pulled him?
I like the way you asked that question. What did you do to him?
Yeah,
it's like we're standing over a body and we're like, what happened here?
Right.
One thing that, had you gone first, could have been to your advantage was because you knew he was going to base his whole argument on Isaiah. You could have led with that, and then he would have really been disoriented if you had cut that off. That's what sort of like Chris's advantage in going first against Matt Slick. He got to cut him off at the pass with all of his usual bag of tricks.
I think that would have thrown him off if he'd prepared anything. But since he didn't prepare anything, he was
it seemed like his opening statement was just recycled from the NYART debate. I don't know.
I watched it.
It felt like I was watching the same debate. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he had at least that much. Maybe that was his prep. Let me just pull this out of my file and I'm ready to go.
So I pulled a lot from that debate, just in terms of like, okay, these are questions that White has historically asked. These are points he's historically made. These are things he's historically brought up in the cross-examination. There was one thing that he only kind of alluded to, and I didn't think that it wouldn't really warrant the time to go into my prepared response for that. But it was in the NYART debate, he said that, and the church has never believed this view. The church has never held this view.
Oh, presentism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
he was attacking presentism. I was like, dude, that's the majority view of Christian history.
Regardless of even that, it's not the popularity of a view that makes it the true view.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the overwhelming number of people who've claimed the name of Christ down through history, most of them are Catholic. If you're not Catholic, then you're already under the average, right? You're already not doing that. If you're a credo Baptist and not a pedo Baptist, right? You believe that you should baptize believers who've placed their faith in Christ rather than babies for some reason, probably, again, it all goes back to Augustine. But if you're a credo Baptist and not a pedo Baptist, it's like you're in the vanishing minority. It's like 8% of all Christians are credo Baptists instead of pedo Baptists. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that the church should be ruled by bishops, the vast majority of Christians throughout history have. So it's not the popularity of a view or the historicity of the view. It's how well it explains the text of Scripture. And I was going to hit him with a John Stott quote, which I'll just drop here because I love it. But he says, the mark of a true evangelicalism is not the uncritical repetition of old traditions, but the willingness to submit any tradition, no matter how venerated, to fresh biblical scrutiny and, if necessary, reform. And that's what I was trying to engage in tonight, is let's put his view for why he thinks the future is a settled line under scrutiny, biblical scrutiny. And if it doesn't pass muster, then we need to jettison it. And I wanted to take that a little further, but I didn't get the chance to. So I worked with what I could.
Well, taking the view that, well, church history, what does the church historically believed? And we can trace that. We talk about this constantly about tracing it to Augustine, who got it from Plato. But what about what the people who wrote the Bible believed? Like, how about the whole Bible is filled with prophets and apostles correcting everybody else? Like Jesus correcting the religious leaders. Well, aren't they part of the church history in effect?
Right.
So, and they were wrong about all sorts of things. And in the epistles, it's the same thing. Like Paul's like, what are you guys doing getting circumcised and keeping the law? Like, this is undermining everything I have taught you. And then in the all the prophets, right? Like that's the whole Bible is like most people getting most things wrong. And then the authoritative people that actually wrote the Bible or it's written about them are the ones doing the correcting. And this idea that like, then after the Bible was done, all the religious leaders were just correct. They never went astray. Like,
right. And he's quoting Justin Martyr. Well, Justin Martyr was a Platonist. He came out of a Greek tradition. He wasn't educated by any of the apostles. And so he liked Platonism. And so sure, James White, they're prior Platonists. I don't think that helps your case. It's Plato all the way down. Yeah. But Tim, you're going to be reading my book on the Hellenization of Christianity, so you're going to get a huge dose of all this stuff.
Super excited about it. I'm not kidding when I tell you I'm extraordinarily excited about that one. So for people who don't know, the reason we're talking about me reading his books is that I'm the one recording an audiobook for it. And hopefully you don't find my voice too grating or irritating. But I really have been thoroughly enjoying it. I'm about halfway through God is Open because it's a tome. But I'm really looking forward to the time I'm finally going to be able to get around to the Hellenization.
Yeah, it's like 150,000 words. And so
I was going to read it anyway, but it's a project. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So
if I could, there's only so much time in the debate, and if there's something that I wish there were more time to expand on although what you got was really good, was when you were talking about the moralistic fallacy. That one you spent, I think that was the most prominent thing he was doing. Wouldn't it be terrible if this were true?
Yeah.
And so you hit that one hard. And then you listed 3 or 4 other fallacies that you didn't really get to address the specifics. Yeah. That'd be something like next time I watch it, I'll probably sort of think those through. Yeah. But they came so fast. It was effective.
Listen to the Mote and Bailey, where he's trying to say he's putting out a relatively benign belief that just about everybody who's a Christian who's ever opened a Bible believes. And then he's like retreating, or he'll put out a crazy thing and then he'll retreat to something that everybody believes as though he just said the same thing when he didn't.
Yeah. God decreed every murder. God decreed this one murder.
Yeah, like God's ways are not our ways, or something like that. God's thoughts are not our thoughts.
What do you do with that? God's thoughts are not God's thoughts are not our thoughts.
He's talking to evil people. He's not talking about everything.
Regardless, what does that have to do with what we just talked about? Right. How does that explain? You just took that out of the context.
It's his proof text.
That's the reverse Uno card.
Because you just ripped it out of the context. What do you
know? Whoever plays that verse first wins. Those are the rules of debate.
Well, you said reverse Uno. It was funny because Tim started pressing James, and James like, no, we can skip all this. And somebody's like, oh, he's trying to skip it. He's playing the skip card. I was like, nope. Tim played the Uno reverse card. He brought it right back. So that's what I love. I love the tenacity with which you did not let him steal the framing. You did not wear the clothes he wanted you to wear. You didn't say the words he wanted you to say, and then you didn't let him off the hook. And so those are some really good instincts, Tim, like really good debate instincts.
Praise God.
So if there's one thing you could do over or add or do better, what might that be?
That is a really good question. Genuinely, and I'm just thinking right now, looking back at it, I had a game plan that I felt very confident in taking into this debate. I executed the game plan pretty much to my ability. he gave me a lot more opportunities for one-liners than I thought I would get, to be very honest with you. I didn't expect that he would say the Paul thing again at the end and allow me to make the Aaron joke. But
that was beautiful. I was like cheering. Oh, he got the last word in with that zinger. Like that basically
his face
was the cherry, the chef's kiss. It just that will make a great clip on its own. And
it felt
right
so
at the
good
end,
to
so
be
that's
able
going
to
to be
do
the
it.
thing people will remember, because you remember the first and last things that happened.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I definitely think the weakest part for me was probably the cross-examination, but that's also the most difficult to prepare for, because I only know so much about what he's going to say before I go in, and I'm prepping and I'm thinking and I'm assessing the arguments he's used before. But then when we get to the cross-examination, that's the part that's most directly social energy, where we're both pressing into each other. It's not talking past each other. It's not talking about what that guy just said, but I get to have my time to make it say what, to say what I want to say. It's very much, this is the socially stressing part. And I felt like I acquitted myself in that space, both in terms of how I responded to his questions and, pointing out when it's not relevant what I believe or whatever, and then also returning questions back to him. I felt like I acquitted myself, but if there were a place I would want to shore up my performance, it would probably be there. You wanted to do the one-liner. I saw you pull the video up.
Well, I was just showing his face. So if you look at James White's face, this might be the incident. Like,
the only way this debate could have been better, Tim, is if I was there to see it in person. And every time James said something, I'd just be like,
I kept looking. Okay, so Will Duffy was in the front row. And I was really thankful that he was there, because he, I got down at the little intermission to go talk to him, and he was just, very, very encouraging. And I kind of walked him through my plan for the second half, and he was saying like, yeah, that's probably going to go really well. So I was very encouraged to have someone there that I know also knows what they're doing, since this is my first public debate. So I was really thankful that he was there. But I don't know if you go back and you watch the video, you'll just see me occasionally like just look down and to my right and just kind of like shake my head and put my hands up like this. I'm looking at Will Duffy. So I'm looking at him, and he's just sitting in the front row like, I don't know.
Oh man. Oh, it's so I don't remember James White doing this poorly in the Enyart debate. And so this is definitely a downgrade for him.
Yeah, this was great, man. This was great.
I'm thrilled.
Now, we talked about this going into this. You were supposed to say Dr. White, James, Jim. Do you mind if I call you Jim? Jimothy, yeah. But you never did that. I was disappointed.
I had to pick my battles.
You had to pick your battles.
I'd rather get him incensed because I have a question that he can't answer, or I have a statement that he can't refute.
No, you did right. You did right. But I like the Jimothy, because I'd completely forgot that office reference.
In all fairness, though, a lot of times text doesn't necessarily stand on its own, and there has to be some interpretive process. It's like, well, all things could mean this. It could mean this. There could be contextually limited. The context could be an expansion of the context, things like that. So language, there has to be some sort of interpretation given to it just because of how it functions. And so, in fairness,
and I can affirm that.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think he can.
Right, of course, and he's not going to be able to. What was really funny was when you got him to admit that he had all these prior false beliefs, and then you pointed out it's God lying to him, and he's like, "No, it's not. It's God teaching me." And then you're like, "Well, how do you know that the stuff you know now? Because I love this stuff." Like, what?
No, it was both. On your view, consistently held, all of it is because of God's decree. He's like, from this time to this time, I think I'm going to hold James White in the dark about the nature of the future and the contents of the future. And I'm going to have him believe that there's going to be a, 7-year tribulation. And I don't, wherever you guys land eschatologically, that's all well and good. But he's just, I'm going to have him believe this and that for a while and have him really kind of like trepidatious about the nature of the future. And I want him to really be freaked out about the contents of the future. But then there's going to be a shift. And I think it'll be really, really fun to watch him kind of like, as I sovereignly, unilaterally decree that his thoughts change, and then like convince him that the mechanism was getting kicked in the head by Jeff Durbin, apparently, which was a fun line he said too. As I'm going to convince him that that's what happened, but really I'm the one changing his beliefs from this to this, so that now he's much more optimistic about the future, and now he's a theonomist. And it's like consistently held. That's what his view would have to be, but he's not. You can't consistently hold it. It's an unlivable worldview.
Right. Did you notice though, when you asked, how do you know what you believe right now is the truth? And he said, because I grew and I love this theology. Like, what? You're appealing to love?
He didn't love it back then. Well, what I think is interesting too. I think James is suffering from some compartmentalism too, because he's treating you like an open theist, and he's not even considering like the same argument Tim Stratton brought with the free thinking argument. And, God is a moral monster who's decreed all evil. Like, he wasn't even able to shift gears and go, oh, this is an argument I've encountered before. Let me try. Like, he just went into like complete meltdown because he was so compartmentalized. He was expecting you to dance to a certain thing that he had worked out in his head. And when you didn't do that, he didn't know how to respond.
Yeah.
The best way to teach kids is by lying to them for years. Yeah. Like in my household, we don't tell kids Santa's real or Easter Bunny's real, or it's like, you just don't lie to your kids. It's
neither do we.
Yeah. Like,
I'll tell you why, actually, not to rabbit trail us, but because my dad was an anti-theist from the age of 5, because his birthday was Christmas Eve. And in 1958, he stayed up until midnight on Christmas Eve to meet Jesus and Santa Claus. And when he found out that it was his dad eating the cookies on Christmas, he got up into his best cowboy outfit to go meet Jesus and Santa Claus. When he found out that it was his dad eating the cookies, he said, they're lying to me about everything. I can't trust them about anything.
Yeah, that's devastating.
That's it. That's why we don't lie to our kids.
Yeah. Same thing.
I liked some of the analogies that you used. I've used the one myself about a kid playing with action figures. Like, this one's elect and this one's depraved. It's like you got He-Man and Skeletor, and you're controlling both, but like this is just the bad one because I've just cast it as that. I'm gonna have them fight, and then and when I brought that up in my class a couple months ago, when I edited the video, I showed little clips from Toy Story of that psycho kid like putting the toy on the barbecue and blowing up little soldiers and stuff. Like that's what God is in their view. And
I had to decide between Sid and Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Yeah, and so then you brought up the Syndrome one, and like that one's really good too. Yeah, I'm the hero because I'm saving you from the threat that I brought about. Really good. So you kind of touched on both of them.
You say, tell me that white got smoked. It happened. White got smoked.
Majorly, Sam. Majorly, Sam. Go watch this. Like, James is like, well, of course I lost. I'm not the one preparing. That means I win.
Yeah,
it was
he
really
basically
good.
said, well, I let you win.
Imagine if I prepared how good this would be. And so take that imagination.
Sam, you and I don't know each other. I'm honored that you are checking in about this at all. I hope if you go back and listen to it that it's an entertaining listen. I have to talk pretty fast to get all the material in that I wanted to get in, so you might not be able to speed me up.
So you taught. What we did was in our commentary, we would like pause the video, try to make some quick comments, then we'd put it at like 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed to catch up. And you were like zoom.
You sounded like Ben Shapiro.
I was gonna say I was Ben Shapiroing it.
Yeah, but when we played James White on 1.5, he sounded like a normal person.
Yeah,
like every poor person in the audience is listening to this on normal speed. Like,
yeah, I couldn't tell he was sped up. Like you sounded like the person reading the disclaimers on the pharmaceutical ad, where it's all kind of broken between syllables and choppy sounding. But he sounded, when he would go back to normal speed, he suddenly sounded a little drunk because it was like, all drawn out. He sounded better sped up.
Yeah. Side effects of debating Tim Barber may include diarrhea and uncontrollable vomiting.
You need to create that short for your channel when you do that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Uncontrollable wrapping of the knuckles on the.
Oh, so yeah, he was
uncontrollable fidgeting.
You could audibly. I'm surprised the moderator didn't step in and say, "Hey, you need to stop that." because that was being picked up all over the mic. His little rapping and tapping.
Even more than my fan.
Yeah, you got a fan going.
I also want to say,
time.
again, just in case this gets farmed for content, like in case someone comes back through here who's unscrupulous and wants to kind of take us out of context or something, I also wanted to just say for the record that the people broadly that were putting this thing on and had us out were extremely hospitable and very kind. And it was a real blessing, specifically Pastor Carlson and his son. We went to lunch with them. They were, Aaron Carlson was the moderator for the debate too. And I thought he did an excellent job. Like he really just kind of let us both cook. And then when it got to the questions, he didn't pick biased questions in favor of Dr. White at all. I was frankly thrilled. I couldn't believe some of the choices he made for some of the questions, but he and his son Hunter were outstanding. And the people that were kind of playing host to us. I had someone before the debate began just come up to me, drop a couple of water bottles off on my desk and say, "Hey, can I get you a cookie?" You know, and asking me if I'd preferred a chocolate chip or an oatmeal raisin. And she got me an oatmeal raisin and said, "Good luck." So
that was the right choice. That was the right choice.
She didn't listen to your preference.
No. Hey, oatmeal raisin is the number one cookie. Okay,
I'm with Warren here all the way.
That's
But
like
they were wonderful
landmine.
people. They were wonderful people. And this is the thing: is that I don't know. I could very much envision a world where I'm persona non grata in that neighborhood or in that church community. But I wanted to just make sure that the record is clear. From my side of the table, I was very grateful for how welcoming and hospitable people were, even though they knew that I was in disagreement. And that continued, by the way, after the debate. So to everyone's credit, I got a lot of handshakes and saying, "Thanks for coming out. That was awesome. You did great." Even from people that I knew, like they asked me questions about, Romans 9 afterwards, and I'm giving them sort of the corporate election and sort of the Israelite focused view. That's not the Calvinist view, and we're talking about it. And they're like, "Wow, okay, cool. I've never heard that before."
So I didn't hear you respond to say, "Hey, that's a corporate election in Ephesians." Did I miss that?
I did. I didn't say corporate election. I didn't use that phrase, but I did point out, well, he didn't just choose them before the foundation of the world. He chose us in Christ, and that in Christ is not something you can just skip over. It has to be a centrally focused part of the sentence, because it's literally it's integral to the meaning of the passage.
Yeah, I think some of us we kind of knew where you were going with it, but you probably didn't get.
I could have made that clear for sure.
Yeah,
I could have taken him to task on that too, but again, I'm trying to pick my battles.
We're a quick response to Sam, because we had access to Tim's debate prep. We knew how the debate was going to turn out in advance. So James didn't know how the debate was going to turn out, but God knew, and so did we. And yeah, so just so you're aware of that, Sam.
So you're omniscient.
I'm clearly omniscient. Yes.
Yeah. And Chris, I wanted to borrow from, like, sometimes you say stuff in debates that just fries people's circuits and gets them so mad at you. Well, okay, frankly, that's your MO. All right.
Yeah.
But you'll say things like, well, I know things. I know the future. I know what my children are going to do. And I wanted to employ a little bit of that without like losing the audience. Because I think sometimes if I do that, the audience is going to look at me like, that dude is insane. I think that they probably say that about you too. And they're not entirely wrong. But I wanted to borrow some of that for the power of saying, like, well, I know my children. I know what they're going to I know broadly what they're going to do tomorrow. I know what they're going to want tomorrow because I know them. Mm-hmm. And I only got a little bit of that out, but I wanted to kind of.
I did notice some of that. Yeah. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Hey kids, do you want liver and onions for dinner or pizza? It's a free will choice.
Well, and I know what my kids are going to complain about tomorrow because I know what they complained about today and yesterday. And their character is in the process of being formed. But I, as a good father, know the heart of my children. It's not hard humans are broadly a lot more predictable than we think we are, especially like at a macro level. At a micro level, it gets kind of squirrely. People have, they make choices that aren't based in reason or that aren't really connectable to any kind of any kind of furnishing in the brain of why they made that specific decision. Sometimes we make just baffling mistakes. But I don't know. I wanted to bring some of that out too, because it's like, look, God being predictive and being able to predict the behavior of people is not a foreknowledge thing. It's a relation. Well, it is a foreknowledge thing in the way that the Bible uses that term. It's not a metaphysical, ungenerated knowledge from before the creation. It is a intimate knowledge of his own creation in time, in terms of how it has already gone. And he doesn't have to do a whole lot of work in order to prognosticate. And in order to be able to kind of look into the
I wanted to address that too, Chris. Like,
yeah, this comment. Okay, so it's not. I don't think this comment's coming from Fire King. It's coming from James White. Having your rebuttals and closing statements written out beforehand simply means you're not debating. You're just there to make a presentation that will be interrupted by the other guy once in a while. I don't agree with James White in that regard.
He's attacking preparation.
Yeah, it's a good idea to strategize about how you're going to frame the debate.
Not on his worldview.
Right.
If God knows every word you're going to say, why shouldn't you?
You need
what value does preparation have on his worldview? Right. It's going to go exactly how God eternally decreed for it to go before he created the world.
Right. But if you are in a debate, you need to figure out how you're going to frame the debate, how you're going to point to that framing, and then how you're going to wrap it up and then repoint people to that framing. That's going to win you the debate, is that repetition and to get people back to those talking points. And so you need some sort of general outline for your closing statement. You can't just waste it on off the cuff shooting. You do need to be able to have the mental capacity to modify it in the middle of the debate. Like, for example, in my Jonathan Middleton debate, I already talked about tonight, where he was actually a nice guy. We had a good conversation. And so my opening, I can't call him out on bad behavior or anything like that. So I had to redo on the fly all my closing because he's a good guy. And so you can't just blindly do it, but you need some sort of callback. You need some sort of closure. And James White, it really showed that he's shooting off the cuff. He just, it didn't do well for this debate. He would have done much better. He probably still would have lost if he did a completely unrelated pre-written closing that had nothing to do with the debate, but made a whole bunch of different points. He would have done much better, but he didn't do anything like that.
The only thing I added, because I was taking a lot of notes in between, obviously when he was doing his opening statement and then his rebuttal, I was taking a lot of notes on the things he was saying. Really, the only things I added were allusions to the phrase flattening it out. I was like, I didn't really use that enough. And he just said it about 4 times. So I need to find a way to kind of work that in, because I did say, collapses it down in the way that I had originally written. And I'm like, you know what? That's an easy swap. I'm just going to make it say flattened it out instead.
Right. So he's trying to meme this thing into existence, like Norman Geisler trying to meme neo-theism as the term for open theism. Calvinist memes, they just don't resonate with normal people. And so you'll hear this phrase repeated, you're just flattening it out. And these are people who just listen to James White and just repeat his little phrases, his little memes that he's trying to disseminate. But they don't catch on. They don't spread culturally. It's bad memeing.
You did get to say that James' view puts God in a box, which I enjoyed, because he didn't say that in this debate, but we get called that. We're told that all the time, and I like to reverse that on them too. Like, can God do something different than he knew he was going to do? Well, no. Can God learn new things? No. Well, then you're putting God in a box. Everything's what God can't do. And
right.
In his, I think it was in his opening statement, when he was characterizing open theists, mischaracterizing, making a straw man, he said that, according to the open view, on September 10th, God had no idea what was going to happen the next day, as if there weren't already all sorts of plans in motion.
Current plans, right.
Yeah. But so he's talking about September 10th, but what he should be talking about with his view is that there were God's plans that existed before he created. That everything that happened on September 11th happened exactly according to God's plan. That was his idea, and that he's always had.
Yep. I had to really strongly resist the urge to start my closing statement with the phrase, well, you heard it here first, folks. James White thinks that the Holocaust and September 11th were both good features of God's eternal decree expressing his evil attributes in the creation. And he planned that from before the creation of the world and then kind of go on from there. And what can you even say about that?
Well, think about all the people who could wag their fingers at it and what good that is. You know, everyone can say, well, Hitler was bad. And you know, that's makes the world better. Because you can teach people that Hitler was bad.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, it's interesting that you're closing. You turn to a lot of these emotional appeals. Emotional appeals, although it is fallacious, it's actually a fairly good debate strategy because people think in emotions. People think in stories. People don't think in logic and facts. They don't think about point, counterpoint, or anything like that. So rhetorically, it's effective, and he didn't set himself up to counter this at all. And he was hoping to sweep it under the rug. And he's like, I'll just say a yes to all your questions. New line of questioning.
I was like, no, you misunderstand the nature of what's happening right here. I have coals that I'm raking you over, and you can't just kind of like roll off of that. We have to go through this thing bit by bit.
Yeah, it's like I got a list of questions. I'm gonna just keep reading my list of questions, James.
Yeah.
To Sam, he did at some point during the debate note that in James's view, evil is an eternal attribute that God is expressing in creation. He did make that, just not at the closing.
Right. And I didn't reconnect it to September 10th and 11th. That would have really been kind of the clincher there. But yes, I did.
A little bit of old reference, like all these. No, they weren't alive. We were old people. Referencing September 11th is like an old person thing to do.
Well, and then also, I like how you were like, he's like, did God know you're going to exist? And you're like, I don't think I'm a necessary being. I'm not all that important. I don't think God was eternally thinking about me. And he's like, how do I respond to this without sounding arrogant and proud and self-absorbed? Okay, next question. Like he actually took it and then left. He abandoned it. Yeah.
In January,
so I can give you some insight because again, I don't know how great the video quality looked decent, but I can give you some insight into kind of his expression. He was just kind of like looking up like this with his brows furrowed, clearly in thought, and then he just stopped and went to something else. He's like, I don't think I want to keep talking about that right now.
You mean you don't believe God has been eternally thinking about me? That I'm not a necessary being? Like that's not a good look for James. So he had to abandon it.
For a second there, it sounded like he didn't know what that means. The term necessary being.
I think it took him a minute to contemplate it.
It's possible. Man.
You tired?
A little bit. I'm the adrenaline has come down a bit.
Right. So I kind of noticed that your heart rate was probably pumping. It's live audience, and there's people might not understand physically when you get up on a stage in front of a bunch of people. These are all eyes that are judging you. It's hard to just perform like you are like a normal person, and so you could kind of see your adrenaline pumping at some points within that debate. Just your body behavior. Your body behavior was not James White body behavior. It was a lot better, but you could still notice some of that tension.
There's like a fight or flight mode when you get up there, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. That was an interesting experience. You guys have had more experience debating, but also like there is also a different dimension of it being an in-person debate. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's an in-person debate put on by a Reformed church where 99% of the audience is Reformed Calvinists who are there genuinely sycophantically excited about James White being there and basically viewing me as the killjoy between them and unbridled connection between themselves and James White. And
imagine their sadness tonight.
Because that...
Imagine their sadness. Imagine how they're driving home. They're like, "Oh,
it might be like the
room was pretty grim.
Election night, Democrats or something."
The room, I will say, the tone in the room was pretty grim on the way out. They were. We had to kind of go out of the auditorium and down some stairs, and there were a lot of people on the stairs just kind of standing there, and there was some head shaking going on. So, for what that's worth.
Yeah, well, body language tells everything. People's behavior tells everything. James White, I don't think he's going to promote this debate. we'll watch and we'll see if he's going to. I don't think he will.
No.
And so I think he internally knows it's a loss for him.
Yeah. I expect to be mischaracterized and misrepresented. But if I have to, I'll just come back to this live stream and clip out the parts where I'm talking about how much I respect him and how much I like him as a person and how great the people were and how well they treated me, and just make sure that everybody knows that that's where I stand.
It's just
I don't hate Calvinists.
Like
I hate Calvinism.
video.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
I say it's just a shame that it's going to end up looking a little bit like a hostage video.
You're not wrong. Yeah. That's all right.
So I was just on Pine Creek's channel talking to him. He's an atheist.
Yep.
And it just reminds me of the fact that if there was like a apocalypse event or something like that, like a nuclear war, I would rather get stuck in a bunker with a random online Calvinist than a random online atheist. Absolute most terrible people whatsoever.
Do you see fire?
What, Tom?
I think you said it backwards. You'd rather be with the atheist?
I would rather be with the Calvinists.
I
agree. I agree. Your rank and file Calvinists are often just trying to make the best of the beliefs that they've got. They're trying rank and file, okay, right? Okay. Rank and file. They're trying their best to really love and serve Jesus from the worldview that they've been handed by people that they trust to teach them the truth. It's when you get into the upper echelon of really trying to live consistently with that and teaching that and knowing the arguments against it and ignoring them and living with the cognitive dissonance and having your paycheck depend on how effectively you convince people of this view that you have a bunch of problems with that you don't want to admit, that real nasty character flaws start to come out. But I'm with Chris. I'd rather have a rank. We had friends, like I said, we had friends at our house, like literally this past week, who are Reformed Calvinist missionaries to Tunisia. He was showing me his like tulip bookmarks and like showing off how cool they looked. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. Good to see you. How have you been? You know, but it's like, he's a person that I love. And I consider him a brother in Christ. He, to his credit, believes that I'm also a brother in Christ, which is not at all the common treatment that I get for holding the view that I hold. And I'm pretty sure you guys could all corroborate that to the degree that your views are public. But yeah, I'm with Chris. I'd rather have a rank and file Calvinist than
not even that, an online Calvinist. And so you're grabbing from the worst of the Calvinists and you're grabbing from the worst of the atheists, the online atheists. The atheists are just condescendingly degenerate, like little know-it-alls, that just weirdos.
I was not tracking with you because the other day you said you'd rather have dinner with Pine Creek than Matt Slick.
Yeah,
so
those are individuals.
Point, but you were talking in more general terms.
Yeah, in general terms, if it's just a roll of a dice, you don't get to pick the individuals. Yeah, I'll go with the Calvinists.
I don't know if you guys see what I just put in the side chat or the
I just read
chat.
it. I can't believe it.
You want to? Do you want to read it to the audience, Tim?
I will happily read it to the audience.
Yeah. This is from James. This is recent.
Thanks to everyone who came out or watched online tonight's debate. Pretty disappointing on many levels, but hopefully still useful despite that. I will be establishing a new rule for all future debates. Seriously. And that's in parentheses. If you must read your opening statement, fine. However, rebuttals and closing statements should reflect the actual debate as it is taking place. Having your rebuttals and closing statements written out beforehand simply means you are not debating. You are just there to make a presentation that will be interrupted by the other guy once in a while. That's not debating. If you can't listen, take notes, and then interact, most people can't do that, then maybe you should reconsider doing debates. Flowers did it to me twice, Aiken did it twice, and Tim Barber did it tonight. There won't be a twice. It is disrespectful to your opponent, to the topic, and to the audience. James White.
James White is a coward. You had known his arguments in advance, and so to be judicious with your time, you said if he brings up this is going to be my short response. If he brings up this is going to be my short response. It didn't mean you were coming out with talking about your favorite pizza topping. It wasn't like it wasn't related. You had prepared, James. He had prepared. And when you bring up what did he bring up? What was his points?
Mostly
Isaiah. He brought up Isaiah.
Yeah.
Cyrus. It's like when you bring up these points and he knows you're going to bring them up, to have a short pre-scripted, this is how I'm going to address this real quickly so I can be judicious with my time. That's not pre-writing a response that has nothing to do with it. He said, I'm going to go ahead and have all these arguments and I'm going to string them together. James did the same thing, right? James does the same thing. Now James has rewritten these arguments so many times that he just goes into robot mode and he just repeats them. So there's not much difference here at all, between going, okay, well, this is the question. I'm just going to repeat the answer. But he's a coward here.
You should be happy about this statement. Did you notice? He says Flowers Aiken, and then he uses your full name. He's giving you publicity, and people just have to grab that and they'll put it into Google. And so he's promoting you.
I look forward to seeing the fruits of that. I don't think it'll go the direction he wants. And he even promoted my book. He grabbed a copy of my book, and really, again, it's for debate prep. But he grabbed a copy of my book. He got the audiobook, and it's like 5 hours long. And he listened to the whole thing front to end. And I was okay, if you want to do that. We actually, again, guys, I'd been posting in like the God is Open group on Facebook and letting people know that I was having a really genuinely enjoyable set of conversations with James White. And I mean that. We were having a very enjoyable set of conversations. I'm not a post-mill theonomist. I'm something of an mill. But when we started talking about eschatology, we could really kind of see eye to eye on a lot of things. And it seems like he really enjoyed my book enough to, subject himself to sitting down and listening to it. I genuinely think he enjoyed it. I really am. I'm sure he said this is pretty disappointing on many levels. And I agree. That's probably how he feels. He's disappointed on many levels. But I was enjoying those conversations. So.
He's disappointed in his own performance, and he's projecting it onto you.
In part, yeah. I certainly feel like I'm going to be the new persona non grata.
Right.
I get a break from having the Scarlet Letter for a while, and that's all right with me too.
Your closing wasn't off track. It hit a bunch of things that
if the shoe fits, like
what's the complaint? What in your closing? He hit you on the anthropomorphism thing because he really didn't like it. But for all practical purposes, he's using this anthropomorphism technique, even though he's not labeling it as such.
Right.
And so he scored some debate points by calling you out on that. Mm-hmm. But you could probably press him on that. That would probably wasted time, probably not worth pursuing.
But I also genuinely made a mistake about the timing on that question where I said that he took 2 minutes to answer something. But that
was still funny because you were like, I'm sorry, you took 1 minute and didn't answer it.
Yeah.
It was still funny. Like
I did kind of Aikido it back in my direction, but I was like, I need to be willing to demonstrate that I'm willing to admit when I was wrong about something too. Like if I got that wrong, oh, I'm sorry. That was wrong of me. Will you forgive me? I got that wrong. I'm not above that. I don't think any Christian should be. But yeah, he still didn't answer the question. He didn't use any scripture. My YouTube channel is The Overlap Life with Tim Barber. It's got a little, two kind of overlapping circles. Open theism isn't really even the theme of the channel. I have a couple of bits of content in there that are open theist related or open theist friendly, or we'll say Calvinist unfriendly. Yeah, thank you for dropping the tag in there. Really, the focus of my channel is essentially trying to help people live in light of what the Bible really says about eternity, and actually trying to have an eternal worldview in light of the fact that God's plan isn't to nuke the world and airlift us all to heaven to sing to him forever, but to restore the world and to reestablish us as his ruling partners to take it someplace beautiful again.
Yeah, so I think that worked to your benefit because when he's researching you, James White, he's finding all this practical living type of stuff. And then he has this little freak out where it's like, oh, I don't know what weird mutant type of open theism you are or something like that. Like, is that professional in a debate, James White? What are you doing?
He was trying to know true Scotsman my view.
Yeah, it's like you're not a real open theist. If you're a real open theist, this is how you'll argue. Let me lay out the open theist case for you, and then you should adopt that, and then you could debate that point. I'm like, what?
I told Tim, I was like, if he doesn't hold his ground, I'm going to change the thumbnail to this. So I'm not going to have to change the thumbnail. I just shared it. Can you put it up on the screen, Chris?
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, if you don't stand your ground, I'm going to change the thumbnail. Have him cowering, but no, Tim, you did good, man. I'm not changing the thumbnail.
You got to rotate it and like make Tim above.
Yeah, you know what? I might actually. I think tonight I'm going to do that before I go to bed. Yeah, I've got Canva open. Let me do that.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to pack it in.
Okay.
If you guys want to do review streams or something like that, let me know.
Right. I think I'm going to have to go through and grab a few choice clips of the little like the zingers or the interesting personal interactions. And so I'll have to scrub this thing.
For sure. But to everyone, thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your love and care. Everybody that was in the God is Open group who volunteered their stance and their opinions and their thoughts was all really valuable. I took it all in. It helped me out a lot. I felt very supported going into this thing, knowing even that I was going to go into the lion's den. And I feel really good about how it went. And if there is a way for me to retain my friendship with my Calvinist brothers and sisters, I genuinely want to still do that. I hate Calvinism, not Calvinists. And I know that you're, on the whole, mostly good-hearted people who want to love and serve Jesus with your whole life. And I just think you're confused about some things. But you probably think that about me too. So.
All right, so we'll start closing down the stream. Tom, you got any closing comments?
I just want to say I was really impressed by Tim. I think this is going to be one of the debates that I can readily recommend. I definitely think people on the open view side will happily promote this debate, and I think you made a lot of points that we hoped you would make. From this, you highlighted the scriptures, really went unanswered, those scriptures for the most part. And then some of your analogies and stuff were great too. I think people really connect with those analogies and, characterizing what good is a hero if he's also the villain, causing the the trouble to begin with. Yeah.
Cheers, Tom. Thank you for that. It means a lot.
And so, Warren, any closing comments?
You done good, kid. You done good. No, I mean, I think you did great. I think you weren't manhandled. Like James has a way of getting in there and grabbing somebody by the scruff of the neck and kind of leading them where he wants them to go, and people get ruffled and kind of off focus. And I think you did really good at holding your own, and I think you did really good at making some really necessary points. I think, I want to go back and look at the debate and flow your arguments, but just from like a first view, I don't think James refuted any of your arguments. I think every point you made flowed from beginning, middle, and end. I don't think there was any point in which he said the text can't mean what he's claiming because this exegetical reason.
Yep.
Or God can't be free in that sense because of this, biblical truth. I don't think there was any point that you made that didn't survive till the end. And I don't think James was able to flow a single point. So like if you're scoring the debate as a debate judge, like this is a clear stomp. And if the roles were reversed, and James flowed every one of his points and you didn't, I would be going, well, it's only your third debate. It's your first public debate. Tim, it's difficult. Debate's not for everybody. You need more practice. Find somebody your own size, like pick on somebody your own size. But I think James is.
Are you replaying your Rogue Calvinist response?
I think after this, James is going to tell you to pick on someone your own size. I think that's what happened. It wasn't perfect. No debate ever is.
Yeah.
You go in with a plan and then you get punched in the mouth and you respond accordingly.
Yeah.
But I think you came out on top in every way that matters.
Right. Absolutely. People should go download this debate before it disappears from the internet.
Thank you for reminding me. I'm going to go clip it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Thanks everyone for watching. Comments or questions, put them down below or start a thread on the God is Open Facebook page. And thank you for listening.